What do you want from the Green Bay Packers when it comes to their approach to winning Super Bowls? What do they owe you? We're going to talk about that today on Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. What do the Green Bay Packers owe you as a fan? What should the goal be? This was sparked by a quote that Mark Attanasio, the owner of the Brewers, gave in an article recently, and a quote that was passed around pretty heavily among Brewers fans. Is it my job to win a World Series? Attanasio said, or is my job to provide a summer of entertainment and passion and a way for families to come together? I don't even need to set aside the context of this, which is an article that if you actually read what he said and the way that this is framed, what you come away believing is that the answer for him and the Brewers is both. But it asks an interesting question, not just from an ownership perspective, but from a fan perspective. How soullessly do you want your team to chase titles? Do you want them to care at all about the fan experience? Because you can look around sports and see there are teams that just don't really care about their fans the way they put teams together. Yes, they're trying to win, but they are doing it at the expense of entertainment value. They're throwing seasons upon seasons away in tanking. Teams are willing to compromise ethical and moral values. And I understand what the cliched response from fans is, I don't care, I just want to win. But are you willing to win? This is particularly pertinent for Packers fans who have essentially never experienced a 3-year losing run like in 30 plus years. Think about that for a second. Like, the Packers have never gone through what a team since the 80s have not gone through. A team like the Buccaneers, who have won 2 Super Bowls in the same time period, but never went through Jameis Winston, #1 overall pick, 2-win seasons, 3-win seasons. The Packers never do that. They never do that. And part of it is because they're a competently run organization, and there's a lot of different reasons. The Rams, they went all in to win a title. That's what I hear from Packers fans, that's what they want. But now they didn't have any picks. They luckily hit on an entire draft class, but that's not the norm. Plenty of teams go all in, they miss their window, and then they're just SOL. Look at Daryl Morey in the NBA. Everything he did in Houston was to chase a title. He didn't care about player chemistry. He didn't care about watchability, because watching that Harden Rockets team was like pulling teeth at times. For as brilliant as Harden as was on the court. Willing to ship away players at a moment's notice, even beloved fan favorites. Is that what you want? Do you really? Because I know a lot of people were upset when the Packers moved on from Jordy Nelson. Oh, he has so much more to give. By the way, he was out of the league in a year. People were upset when they moved on from Clay Matthews. He was out of the league in a year. This is something that I just am flagging because I happen to believe that the Packers are trying to win Super Bowls, but they also care about the fan experience. We know things like family night, all of the access they give to fans, that is valuable to them. But they're also good every year. And this idea that they haven't ever gone all in, first of all, is just flatly wrong. But number two, if you're good every year, being around the basket, eventually you're going to score. If you're good every single season, guess what? It's really fun to win 11, 12, 13 games, even if your season ends in misery. If you go back to 2000, the Packers have one Super Bowl win. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have two. Would you trade places with Buccaneers fans? Would you? They've got more titles. I wouldn't. Because being good every year, 17 weeks of feeling like you have a chance to win the Super Bowl, 18, 19, 20 weeks into the playoffs, winning a bunch of games, that's the entertainment value. That's the family experience. That's all of the things that the Packer culture and the history provide for you. Are you willing to compromise some of that to win titles? I think the answer for some of you is going to be yes, which I understand. I'm not even saying that that's wrong. I'm really not. But I think this is a question that we don't ask often enough. To what lengths are you willing to go? Are you willing to throw away 5, 10 seasons potentially? Look at the 76ers. I mean, how many years of misery did the process take before they were just a passable team? You want to live through 3-4 years, 82 game seasons in the NBA of just downright dog water basketball? In the NFL, 17 weeks as a Bears fan, as a Lions fan for most of their existence? Is that what you want? Even if the trade-off was a Super Bowl? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer here. I'm asking you to do the Obi-Wan Kenobi here. Search your feelings. Search your feelings. Be honest with yourself. If the Packers won between 10 and 13 games for the next 10 years and may or may not win a Super Bowl, would you trade that for 8 years of between 4 and 8 wins, but definitely get a Super Bowl? I think I'd take my chances with the first one. That would just be me, but you may feel differently. But that's why this is an interesting question and why I do think it's important to take stock of how soulless do you want your organization to be? Do you want them to be cutthroat? Do you want it to be no fun like the Patriots were forever? I'm sure it was pretty fun to be a Patriots fan. It was no fun to be a player. Do you want them to say, hey, actually, we're going to have to burn this all down. Let's trade all these guys and start over. And for the next 5 years, we're just going to try and figure this out and build it back up. And it may or may not work. For most teams, it doesn't. Look at the Bengals. They're a great example. They have to reset post Andy Dalton. They wander in the wilderness. They're finally bad enough, and they happen to get lucky enough to have the number 1 pick in a year where you would love to have the number 1 pick. You would love to have the number 3 pick, the number 5 pick in that 2020 draft. If you're the Titans this year, you have the number 1 pick in like the worst possible draft to have the number 1 pick. You have to get lucky. The Bengals, they get Joe Burrow. He gets hurt. Then they're good. Then they're kind of good. And now they're kind of meh. And they're talking about spending $1 billion to keep the core of a team together that couldn't even make the playoffs last year. I mean, talk about, and with superstar players, with a franchise quarterback, with a guy everyone agrees is a top 5 quarterback. I'm a little more dubious of that. There's no guarantees that even doing it the right way is going to lead to a better outcome. But they're trying to chase a championship. Now, they're not willing to do certain things financially, all that stuff. You have to be so supremely competent and get so supremely lucky to pull off what the Eagles have done. To reset it, new quarterback, new coach, and win the Super Bowl in such quick succession. It is a modern miracle. Most teams can't do that. Most teams don't do that. It is an outlier in modern American sports for it to have happened. And again, I think it took a monumental amount of luck. Nick Foles the first time, for Christ's sake. Give me a break. So, and part of this was sparked by going back and looking and the Packers haven't had a top 10 pick since AJ Hawk, since BJ Raji. That's a long time to not have super premium draft capital. It's really nice to get Aiden Hutchinson, but it sucks to have the number 2 overall pick because it means you sucked the year before. Packers fans have never, of a certain age anyway, any Packer fan that is younger than 40 has basically never experienced anything close to what Bears fans have been suffering through for 40 years. So again, I will always believe that the Packers are actually trying to win. But I guess what I'm arguing is the other part of that, the let's have fun and enjoy the season. Well, you have to have a good team to enjoy the season. You can't be bad. You have to feel like you're a contender. So you have to build a good enough team for that. And not that that's enough, but what I want you to do is understand how valuable that is, the entertainment part, because not everyone gets to experience that. Other teams, they've experienced titles. I don't think, if you look at what the Rams have done in the last 15 years, they have more titles than the Packers. They also have had some absolutely brutal seasons with some brutal coaches, with some brutal quarterbacks. If you're the Packers, I don't think the average fan is going to trade the last 15 years, the 2011 through 2024, for the Rams. Go back and look at some of the seasons. There's a reason. Now they traded up for Jared Goff, but they were in position. The Jeff Fisher 7-9, it became a whole thing that all they did was play mediocre football every year. You don't want that. You don't want that. So again, I'm not judging you if what you're saying is, I don't care, bring me the title. What I want to impress upon you is the other piece, don't take it for granted. Don't take it for granted. Because being good every year is so much better than the alternative. It's so much better. Winning would be the best. The best would be to be competitive every year and then win a bunch of Super Bowls. That'd be the best. But you get to decide how you want to be a fan. Just don't take the winning and the enjoyment of winning for granted. All right, everyone's got a lot more money to play with than we thought. What is that going to mean? How is that going to manifest itself in free agency? What does it mean for the Packers? We'll talk about it next on Locked On Packers. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention so they can work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. The projected salary cap, it's going to be big. It's going to be big, baby. Somewhere in that, it's 277 plus to 281 even. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be significantly higher than it was, significantly higher than projections. It means 20 to 30 more $million potentially than we thought. And this number is only going to keep going up. The ratings are still crazy. In fact, they're better than ever. We have better metrics than ever. And we're a couple years from a renegotiation of the money deal, of the TV deal. Netflix, Amazon, it's going to go nuts. It's going to go absolutely nuts. That's an issue for another day. Not an issue, but it's a topic for another day. So what does this mean? Well, this to me is a double-edged sword. Because teams could say, well, we have more flexibility now to re-sign our own guys. It is less punitive is the wrong word, but it is less financially taxing on us as a team to sign guys that we were kind of on the fence about, then have to go out and replace them. It's actually cheaper to us because, relatively speaking, they're now less expensive than we thought. $5 million for a player when you have an extra 15, 20 million is now in relative terms less expensive than it was. Your spending dollar, the purchasing power of that dollar has gone up. Well, or you just have more of it. Both is true. $5 million means less to you when you have more money. So that's one potential outcome. And I think that will be felt in some ways on some teams. The flip side of that is there could be agents, there will be agents who say, forget re-signing. I'm not re-signing. I'm hitting the market where everyone has money to spend. If the circumstances were as we kind of thought they would be, it was going to be more difficult for teams to retain their own players. And so there are fewer players available out there who are going to get big money deals because fewer teams had money. Now, if everyone has money, that can potentially drive up the price, especially of the premium free agents. The highest end guys can command more on the open market. I don't think it changes the calculus on some of the players that we've talked about, the Joey Bosa's of the world, because it's like, well, no, $35 million on the cap is still a lot. And the savings is still a lot. So you could go out and spend that money either internally or externally in a more efficient way. It depends on what the savings are in case by case. I do think we will see more teams take we can afford to pay our own guys because there is value in certainty, and teams pretty consistently have found it that you have more information on your own players. You see them in the building. You've got all the medical information you could want. You know, they've been in your building for, in the case of rookie contract players who are getting second deals, 4 or 5 years. There is some marginal value that you have in the knowledge that you have of those players. That bringing in a new player from the outside is adding risk. That being said, that risk is a little less when you've got more money, right? If you have, let's say, you've got $1,000 to go spend at the mall. You might be a little bit more judicious with that money, right? Well, I know this brand. It fits me well. I know how it's going to wear. $1,000 would be a lot to spend at the mall. But let's just say. But now you go to the mall and you've got $2,000 or you've got $1,500. Like, that's not really how the math works here. But let's just say maybe you're a little less judicious. Maybe you're willing to take on a little bit more risk because the cost of that risk has been tamped down a bit. Now, we're still talking about, single digit percentages in terms of the difference of overall money, but it's not nothing. I don't think it will have zero impact here. The teams with a lot of money to spend will now have really a lot of money. And so they're still going to be able to outspend most other teams. Like, that part doesn't change. Everybody having more money than they thought doesn't change the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's just that the people who didn't have any money before or who had very little money now have more, slightly more. That's good news for the Chiefs, the Bills, those kinds of teams, because they were pretty strapped for money. Now, the Packers weren't, but it allows them to play around a little bit more. Maybe it changes the way you handle some contracts. Maybe you were going to let TJ Slayton walk because this is a loaded draft class and you didn't really want to spend the money there. Well, now you found the money in the couch cushions to pay for TJ Slayton. So, and TJ Slayton's a really good run defender. He's a valuable member of your team. He just helped turn your defense around. He's a draft pick. Why not just pay him then? And then if you want to go draft somebody, Who cares? The $5 million or $8 million or whatever it's going to cost you to bring back TJ Slayton. It's like, well, okay, who cares? That's money I found on the couch. Remember when you were a kid and you used to find 50 cents in the couch, 75 cents? And I'm old enough that I could go to the store and buy a candy bar for that. That's basically what they're doing. Oh, hey, look, there we got some extra money. Why don't we buy a nose tackle? And they can. That's pretty cool. So maybe it does change the calculation for the Packers with the retaining of some of these players. Maybe you get an extension done early with someone like Zach Tom because you can. I think all of this is on the table. I think it will manifest itself. I don't think there will be a uniform way that this manifests itself. I think that's fair to say. It's not just that, there will be far fewer free agents because teams will pay. I think it will incentivize some teams to take some risk and say, we're definitely not going to pay you because we think now we've got more money to go sign a better player. And we're not worried about the risk because it now is going to cost us less relationally relative to the cap than it was before. And I think there were going to be some players who say, forget an extension. Let's hit the open market. Let's see who wants to spend. Come get me. Come get me, NFL. Everyone's got money to spend. Luckily, the Packers don't really have expensive guys to deal with. They can keep anyone they want to keep this year, they can keep. And they can go out and spend some money. Packers are in a very advantageous spot heading into this free agency. And they are in an advantageous spot with Jaire Alexander as we stare down a potential showdown here. I'll tell you why next on Locked On Packers. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets in a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go check out Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. First, the Madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. The Green Bay Packers have the leverage. Where have we heard that before? This Jaire Alexander situation, and there was a great piece on this in SB Nation, the Acme Packing Company blog, my old stomping grounds over there, that pointed out there is no deadline for this. This is not like when the Packers had to trade Aaron Rodgers or some bonus was going to trigger where he was going to count, whatever, some ungodly number on the cap. It was like $80 or $90 million, something crazy. They don't have to do anything. That's the beauty. They don't need to get off his money. They don't. They have the money. They can carry his money, still have flexibility, and they can wait. They don't have to cut him now. They don't have to cut him before the draft. They don't have to cut him at all. They can say, yeah, this is over internally. But we haven't heard the report, like the Deebo Samuel stuff. It's like, no, they're probably going to cut Deebo Samuel. Devontae Adams, we know they're going to cut Devontae Adams. Everyone seems to understand that is what's happening. I don't know that is what's going to happen here. The Packers can wait. And they can wait. And they can wait. And if what they really want to do is say, hey, Jaire, we'd like you to take a pay cut to build in the fact that you have not been healthy. And they can say, or you're just going to stick around here. You want to go somewhere else? Sorry. The Packers can just hold if they want. And I think the first wave will be around franchise tags. We'll see a slew of cuts heading into the new league year. But my guess is there will be discussions at the Combine about trading Jaire Alexander. Brian Gutekunst will vet the room, so to speak. He will see if there's interest out there. And if there's not, they do not have to do anything right now. They can wait. You get through free agency. Maybe teams didn't get the guys that they wanted. How about a nice Jaire Alexander for a draft pick? A pick swap? A player for player trade? What do you think? No? Okay. Now we get to draft day. Day 1 happens. Oh, you didn't get the corner you wanted. How about a nice Jaire Alexander? I know that he's not in new condition, but still a really good player. Oh, day 2, you didn't get that corner you wanted in the second round, the third round. How about a nice Jaire Alexander? And then after the draft, the Packers, frankly, then you can just wait until June 1 if you want. My guess is they would just take their medicine in year 1. That is generally how they do it, and they can afford to do that. It will save them money, and they can essentially use the money that they save from moving on from Jaire Alexander in whatever form that takes to pay for their draft class and have a little buffer. They don't have to do anything. So this is why, and this is probably the best player the Packers have been in this position with in a long time. I mean, Josh Sitton, probably the last one where it's like, this guy's really, really good still, but the Packers are moving on for a slew of reasons. In the case of Josh Sitton, he was still a solid to good. He was a good player when he left Green Bay, but a couple years later, he's out of the league. So did the Packers make the right call? That one's a little less obvious than, when they moved on from Nick Perry and he's out of the league in a year. Never played a snap again, in fact, after the Packers moved on. So a little more complicated there. But Like, I always felt they could have gotten something for Mike Daniels when they released Mike Daniels. They were just over it, I guess. This is different. And this is premium positions. A former All-Pro. And so I think that there's more value here to be had. I think one of the reasons the Packers released David Bakhtiari is because he was hurt. And it was unclear if he would ever play again. I think that that's, at this point, kind of over. Unfortunately. Jaire Alexander, it's not. He played 2024 and played well. So the Packers have the cards here. They can wait for a team to get desperate. They don't have to move on. And then once they've exhausted every possibility, once every team gets desperate enough, they can cut him in August if they want. Who knows what happens? Early training camp, someone tears an ACL. Hey, we'd love to have Jaire Alexander. They can just tell Jaire, don't show up to camp. We'll figure it out. And let's be honest, he probably wouldn't anyway. I continue to believe there is a trade out there. We talked about this the other day on the show. He is too valuable to the right team in the right situation to not get something for him. And the Packers can be patient. And I think they will be. All right. We are back tomorrow. A lot more here to come on Locked On Packers. Keith Sanchez from Locked On NFL Draft joins us tomorrow. I know I teased Adam Rank, but I wanted to get you set for the Combine. We're going to have a ton of great stuff coming from the Combine. I might save that Adam Rank interview for another time. I'm going to be very busy at the Combine, so there may be some reasons for that show to have to run because all the fun happens at night. You get to see a lot of people at the Combine. NFL people, media people, scouts, all kinds of stuff. So that's all coming soon. But Keith Sanchez on the show tomorrow talking Combine, draft, all the good stuff as we get ready for Indy Week next week. Follow me on the social media, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast, Locked On Packers. Subscribe to the podcast, rate and review. It really does. If you've never done that, please do it. It really does help the show. And go subscribe over on YouTube. I think maybe we'll go live on YouTube after the Brian Gutekunst press conference on Tuesday morning. Maybe I'll have a guest. I don't know. We'll see. Let's do some fun stuff from the Combine. Let's do it so you can stay Locked On Packers.